Welcome to my review of Wreckfest. I assume if you're watching this video, you've probably already seen other reviews of Wreckfest. If you haven't and watching this as your first review, I very much thank you for that. If you waited this long to see my review of a game that's already been out for over a week, that's definitely nice, but because I'm assuming the majority of y'all have seen reviews of Wreckfest, and I'd just be repeating the same information anyway, I'm not going to review the general, do the crashes look cool? Of course they do, everyone said that. Is the game worth buying? Yes, of course it is. I'll go ahead and say it right now, my overall rating of the game is roughly about a 9 out of 10. It's really good overall. There's a few glitches and such in there, and there's miscellaneous small gripes, but it's overall a really great game. But pretty much the vast majority of people are saying that. My review is going to be more how the game can actually be played, and miscellaneous things that you can do to improve your experience, and overall reviewing how the game is going to be played in terms of the players who are going to come back. This isn't necessarily reviewing for casual player, this is more reviewing for someone who's going to play it for a while, because I can already tell I am. Because essentially, an overall review of what this review is going to be is Wreckfest brings me back to video gaming 5 or so years ago. While that may sound like a negative on paper, I'll just start the general review and kind of go into it as the review goes. To begin with, here's a review of actually how to get the most money and rep quickly in the game, so that way you can continue with the game with all of the assets available as quickly as possible. There's two general strategies for this. The strategy that I'm showing is using the Big Valley Speedway course, which turns in on itself. Essentially, you can pick forward or backwards around the tight turns in the track, and you can just wreck the holy snikes out of other vehicles. The vehicle that I'm using is the heaviest possible fast A-class vehicle, which granted does come if you only pre-ordered, but there's other vehicles pretty close to this. This is essentially any A-class vehicle with a strength rating of at least 7 or so will work perfectly fine for this, but this seems to be the best one. The Bandit Ripper, that's a pre-order bonus, and maybe you'll get it later in the game if you didn't pre-order, but this is the general settings. This I actually saw someone on GT Planet make a post about, but for a different track, which again, it's two strategies, I'll discuss them both, but also the one that I'm using. But this is directly from GT Planet. I very much like the person who sold this, because it's, from what I can tell, the best way to make money in rep. The race, 23 vehicles, 60 laps, but as I saw the video, 60 laps is irrelevant. Just make it 60 laps, because that's the max you can do it. The weather doesn't matter. And then make sure to have the opponents beat lawnmowers, because those are the lightest and slowest vehicles in the game. And make sure the damage is realistic, because then those lawnmowers get wrecked out as quickly as possible, and it's slightly more money you make total and rep. For the settings, I do it custom, because automatic versus manual transmission doesn't affect how much money you make, but the other settings do, like ABS, traction control, stability. That does, so have them all off to make the max amount of money and rep possible. Against lawnmowers, it's no big deal. Even if you're not the best driver in the world, it's still quite easy event to do. Even with the difficulty on expert, because essentially the car that I'm using has about 500 horsepower, and it's incredibly heavy. These lawnmowers have about 50 horsepower, and they're incredibly light. So here's a general review of how to make some money and rep quickly. After selling the settings, here is what you do. This car is way faster than any one particular lawnmower. All the lawnmowers combined, though, well, they don't necessarily even try to hit you, though, because while expert AI sometimes will gun for you, because it's pointed at the expert AI, it makes it harder. The lawnmowers, though, are kind of, sort of, still try to avoid you, because they're aware they're a lot lighter than you are. So you do have to initiate contact with them, but they will also contact themselves And with damage unrealistic, that makes it quite easy because this turn is forward or backwards. It makes a big clump, and from here on, it's fishing in a barrel. They're all clumped up, essentially, and you're way faster than the lawnmowers and a way heavier car than them, and you just wreck the holy snikes out of them. They're not necessarily one-hit kills. You have to have a whole heck of a heap of momentum to get it. But, like that, the first hit didn't get it, but the second hit on the other lawnmower did. If the lawnmower is even turning slightly, you'll probably be able to wreck it in one hit. If it's going straight, you have to have a lot more speed than it to get it. But the lawnmowers protect themselves out, and you can get quite a few of them as well. If they're turning, it's pretty much a one-hit kill. And after... well, this clip's already about half over. After it's fast forward, because it's just wrecked the lawnmowers for the rest of the time, again, you can go backwards around like this turn and such. For this particular turn, just use judgment. If it's only one or two lawnmowers in the turn itself, probably go the same way as the lawnmowers are. If there's quite a few of them, go ahead and go through the turn backwards because you hit a lot more of them. But essentially, you just do that to get the max amount of lawnmowers, go backwards at the beginning, and you get quite a few of them, quite damaged, and then they'll take themselves out, while you can still take more of them out as well. And I'm pretty sure this is the very final one, I think, maybe. Yeah, that's the very final one, and this is the most important point of the whole thing. Remember how I had it set to 60 laps? Well, however many laps you do, as long as you do at least one lap. After that one lap, then you can completely cross the line, so you're on lap 2 then. Do one the whole lap, so it says you're on lap 2. If all the other vehicles are totaled, wrecked, DNF'd, whatever, you can total, wreck, DNF yourself, and it counts you as doing the 60 laps. With this, just go into a wall really fast, really hard, and then eventually you'll just be out of it. You can take yourself out, and even though it says it's a DNF, if you're the last one to DNF and you've gone a full lap, it counts you as the full 60 laps, and then boom, you get the full amount of money. And the other strategy for this, as I mentioned, was put on GT Planet. This course is about 1.1 miles, but there's Motor City Circuit, Detroit, essentially, is 1.8 miles, so you get more money and rep for going around that track. But it's a normal racetrack. There's no parts in which you could pick forward or backwards on. So I feel like this takes about half the time or so to finish compared to doing the Detroit track. The Detroit track is about 70, 80 or so % longer. So it's not quite twice the amount of the money, but it takes about 2 times longer. So overall, I would say this strategy is slightly overall faster because even though it's less money in rep, it can be done quicker. But to an extent, it's also preference as well. If you want to run an actual racetrack, do Motor City Circuit. If you just want to have a downright demolition derby, do this strategy, the Big Valley Speedway. I don't even know what it's called, but it's the one that turns in on itself. And then look at that, folks. That's 44,000 rep. Look at how much that does when you're already on level 53. That... wait for it, folks. Yeah, that we're at level 52. But still, that leveled me up an entire, like, 75% of a level. When, once you're at level 50, essentially, you don't even have to level up any more than that. So let's say you're level 30, that's probably 2 levels right there. And just one race that takes, like, 3 minutes. And it is 8,300 or so credits. The rep will depend on how many lawnmowers you take out. The credits will stay the same. So, that's how to make a lot of money in rep in the game. By actually playing the game using its mechanics, wrecking the holy snikes out of people to the point of the game. So you think, but this is more of the review of the actual gameplay, not just showing it exploits. So you think the point of the game is wrecking. If you wreck everybody else, you win, right? Yeah, that makes sense. It shows here that's actually sort of a just good all around. way of doing it? Well, here's this, folks. This is career mode. One of the event types in career mode is a one-on-one race against a better variant of your car. A lot of video games do essentially this. Decent examples like a Need for Speed Shift-esque past versus present thing. Like you're in the old Ford Mustang against a new Ford Mustang or something like that. If you beat the new one, you get the new one. It's kind of sort of the same with this. This is its road car variant against its race car variant, or RS as they call it here. Essentially it's a race car variant, but because it's a race car variant, it's weaker. It's a bit faster, but it's weaker. So if you total it, that's the easiest way to win, is damage it to the point in which you'll be faster. Your car will be stronger, so you'll be faster. And if you can get lucky and roll it, you can take it completely out. Granted, you automatically win this way, but only if you finish the race this time. Even though the other one I sold, if you DNF yourself when you're ahead and you finish a lap, both of these are parameters that I've met here. As y'all can see, I'm done. Lap, I'm in first. I still lose. Yeah, that's just this straight up gripe there, then yeah, that needs fixed. It's not necessarily a major issue because these events are fairly rare in the career mode. And if you don't want the cars they offer anyway, you don't have to do that. That's one of the good things about career mode, though, has also been said in other videos, so I'm not going to cover it much here. Is that you don't have to win every event in career mode. You can pick and choose what you want to do as long as you have enough total points to move on to the next thing. You can do it however you want to do it. Just if you do these events to get the car, you actually have to finish these events, even though I've already sold previously that the best way to make money is actually not finish. So yeah, that's straight up stupid. It's total BS that you can't win these events by just DNFing yourself later, but yeah, hopefully they'll get fixed in the future, but hopefully even more so they don't go to reverse and make it to where the money exploit doesn't work. Honestly, I don't think they will though, because I mean the game is literally called Wreckfest. Like their tagline is drive fast, die last. I think that's literally the tagline for the game. That's exactly what I'm doing when I'm doing this, is I drive faster than the other car enough to damage it and die last. But here they don't give you credit for dying last. So, yeah, I would think more than likely they would fix this and not the quote-unquote exploit, because the exploit is the point of the game. But here's another point of the game that's kind of iffy, though, and this can really be shown about anywhere. It doesn't really matter what clip I show for this. It can kind of be said about any part of the game. I guess I'll just go here, and eventually it will come up at some point or another. You can pretty much guarantee it. Wait for it, folks. Here's a good one to show it. After this, you'll probably already know it's coming, is the loading. This is literally just loading a menu. It's not loading a race. 20-something percent. 60-something percent. 70, 100. That literally took like 15 seconds just to load a menu. To load a race, it's at least a minute or so per race. So if you do like a 3-lap race at an oval or something, you might literally have more load time than actual on track time. Here's a load time for an actual race. I mean, it's not good, folks. I mean, it's slightly better with general updates and tweaks of the game and such, but yeah, this is really about the only complaint in the review of the game that I'm not so sure will be fixed, because they've apparently done miscellaneous stuff to it, but still the load times are not exactly the dandiest. I will say this, though. I mentioned in a previous video, too, about the online load times and how about 50% or so of the races I legitimately freeze up in. Lately, knock on wood, I haven't gotten it all that bad with loading into the races themselves when not streaming. But still, I simply just cannot stream Wreckfest or it will freeze, period. This is the end of the story, it will freeze. So that's kind of a bummer. Honestly, I guess I could do an internet test right now to show y'all. That's actually not a bad idea. And I mentioned it here, I'll do an internet test right on camera to show that my internet is perfectly fine. It doesn't show passwords or anything. It shows... Actually, it doesn't show anything. There's a wired connection here. This is my wired connection. And I still can't stream with this connection that it's about to show once it loads up here. Granted, it does say the general stuff here, network traffic and blah blah blah. Wait for it, folks. That's quite fast. 25 megabytes to download, 2 megabytes upload. The 2 megabytes upload isn't anything dandy, but internet, theoretically, what I'm seeing doesn't necessarily need the upload. Like, the upload might matter to other drivers. I might be lagging to other drivers or whatever, but what matters for the individual in the online lobby is a download. And I mean, 25 megabytes pretty good. Now, granted, there is this, which I'm not so sure about. Connection speeds are estimated. That's fine. But then it might not be supported IP packet fragments, blah, blah, blah. I have wired Type 2 internet and 25 megabytes download. I mean, I'm not even lying here. I think just for individual house internet that's not a business, that's nearly as fast as it could possibly be where I live. Like, I don't think it can really go any faster. Up until like 2 years ago, where I lived couldn't physically go over 12 megabytes. It was only like 3 years ago or something that they upped it to be able to go to about 25 or so. At University of Kentucky, like the most known and biggest university in the entire state where I go, I have about 60 megabytes download and about 40 megabytes upload. It's not wired, but it never goes below 30 or so. I've mentioned this in a special tape as well. I still cannot stream with Wreckfest. It might just because the game is more popular than they figured, so the servers are more crowded or whatever. But either way, that's probably the most negative point of the game as a whole. There's miscellaneous small things like, yeah, there's a certain event in which you can't exploit, whatever. There's load times that are long. We were kind of used to this with THQ companies. I remember way back even in PS2, MX vs. ATV Unleashed, one of my top 10 favorite video games of all time. I have the list for it and such. Those load times were quite terrible as well. But that was 15 years ago. We're still having incredibly long load times in 2019. I mean, But back to the footage and such. Honestly, that's kind of nearing the end of the review. But other miscellaneous things that I can mention, I guess, in there too, is... It's been said before too, with career mode grinding and such getting cars. If you are truly just doing the career mode and such to grind cars, yeah, it can take a bit. Some of the cars, again, you can win from events, as I mentioned, though you do have to physically finish the event. But this is the beauty of Wreckfest, is that you can actually grind better and quicker, like the strategy that I showed at the beginning of the video, not worrying about career mode. The only real reason to play career mode in Wreckfest is if you want the individual cars in the career mode itself, or you just want the PlayStation or Xbox, whatever system we have it on, trophies. Neither of which are downright required. The trophies are just something cool to look at on PlayStation. I think they work a bit differently in Xbox from what I remember, but whatever. And the cars that are given per certain events in career mode, they're nice and such, but they're not game breaking. So the grinding is a bit long just doing career, but doing custom race like I showed, it's no big deal whatsoever. But then there's the thing with the custom races as well, is how much variety can you get from them? Well, I'll say this. Like many other reviewers of Soda, and again, I'm not going to touch on what a lot of the reviewers sold, there's not the most cars in Wreckfest. There's not the most tracks in Wreckfest. But there is online in Wreckfest. So while you might get bored of custom events after a few weeks or whatever, the online, you can attempt to play competitively or not. It's just whatever suits your driving style. And this harkens back to where I was saying it brings me back to video games or so 5 years ago. 5 or so years ago, let's say end of GT5 era, beginning of GT6 era, I was okay. Not as good as I am now in just terms of overall pure speed and racing and such. I gave an attempt to be fast and such, but more than anything at that point, I just enjoyed general dirty racing and wrecking the holy snikes out of people. Back then, more than anything, I gave an attempt at being competitive, but I didn't care all that much about that back then. More than anything back then, I just wanted to be competitive to help people on Team Mopar more than anything back then. 5 or so years ago, that was the main goal of Team Mopar, is just help each other get better and such. Now Team Mopar is plenty big enough to where essentially the main goal of Team Mopar is now to just have fun and enjoy the whole heck of a heap of members. By default, we're going to help each other because we're a really big team now. So now this game's getting to the point of, I don't see much point in being competitive anymore. You can attempt to race competitive in Wreckfest, but the lapdown cars aren't Ghost in career mode, in custom event, or online. There's no cap to performance point yet. Like there's A class races in career mode, B, C, D. But in online, it seems it's either just A-class cars or special cars. So you just use the best of what you got. Like for Demolition Derby, you just use the heaviest vehicle. That's A-class. For General Race, you use the vehicle with the highest performance points. Or, because everybody's going to do that, there's no cap, there's no regulation, so everybody's going to be doing the same thing. You can essentially just have fun and use whatever vehicle you want. If everybody's going to try to race competitively in essentially the same vehicles, because there's no vehicle limits or restrictions or whatever, it's just use the best you have, you might as well just have fun with it, because it's going to come down to luck more than skill a lot of the times anyway with Wreckfest. Which can be looked back down upon as a bad thing, but I mean, I'll say this. All things considered, yes, I've had a fair share of fun points in GT Sport, but they're literal just points. Their individual races, the actual fun and such may last for 20 or so minutes at a time, and then be done for weeks on end. Back 5 or so years ago in gaming, I could just race in a dirty room for hours on end, day after day, and even if it's just the same few tracks, online makes such a variety that it doesn't matter. It may be the same cars, same tracks, and even to an extent the same people. But it's always going to be at least somewhat different. And you didn't ever have to take it all that seriously either. Of course, driver talent will always help. 5 or so years ago is when I realized I actually have decent driver talent because I'm winning a fair few of these luck-based races even still. And then the rest is history in terms of that. Now, though, the history's sort of kind of coming back to reality, and I really don't think that's a bad thing that history is repeating itself, because it's repeating itself, but getting rid of a lot of the flaws of old games. Like, Gran Turismo still doesn't have much of a damage system, and they definitely don't have much of a visual damage system whatsoever. Wreckfest is the best visual damage system as any game in console gaming history. It's made by the people made flat out. That's been said in reviews. But this is something that hasn't really been said all that much in reviews. It's just the overall... It's nostalgia, but in a new package. I'm nostalgic for something I've never necessarily even had. I've never played a flat out game before. In hindsight, I wish I did. Just back when those games were relevant, circa PS2 era, so I didn't buy my own games. My parents bought games, so they never bought those necessarily. I wish I played them, but I didn't. But even playing a game like this makes me nostalgic for a completely different type of game, like Gran Turismo or something. And then in hindsight, realizing that all of the fun I had in Gran Turismo 5 and 6 and Dirty Rooms and such, of course it's always fun racing the real life car and like Team Mopar and such, like having my Dodge Ram be able to dominate Suzuki GSXR four-wheel motorcycles essentially. That's all fun and good and such, but this is a completely new way of doing an old thing. People have raced dirty in video games since the dawn of racing games. But this game allows it and perfects it. And though I've never had an experience like this exactly before, it still makes me so nostalgic for what I've had before, knowing that I can do it better than I ever have, and I enjoy what I had 5 or so years ago a whole heck of a heap as well. It makes me enjoy what I had a long time ago more now, and even more so knowing that I have it yet again in a new and perfected way. There's miscellaneous glitches and bugs and stuff that I've even sold in just miscellaneous videos on the channel, like even the first Wreckfest video that I had on the channel. But I think for the most part, everything in the game, but maybe the load times, they've done a bit to help with them, but it's still pretty long, can be fixed, essentially. Wreckfest, just don't take it seriously, and this is one of the better games out there right now. If you're a serious hardcore sim racer and such, like I've attempted to be the last few years, maybe this game ain't for you, but even still, I feel like if you are a serious racer, it's always good to just have a fallback just to forget your troubles, like if you have a bad race or something on GT Sport. This is still a good game to have to just take your anger out on people, because you're allowed to take your anger out on people. It's encouraged to do so. It's literally called Wreckfest. Drive fast, die last. I mean, that's literally the point of the game. I'm a dirty racer at heart, I'm not gonna lie. The sim racing's come because I just became good at dirty racing and I had the confidence to do it. This game makes me nostalgic for times I had before. And I'm good enough through my sim racing experience makes it to where I can still be competitive in those experiences as well. Well, yes, there'll be the fair bit, I'm sure, online, in which I'll be leading a race and then I get taken out by sheer dumb luck. But then the next race, even if somebody took me out unintentionally by sheer dumb luck, I can take them out intentionally over and over again because I feel like it, and I won't even be looked at as the bad guy, even though I probably am. It doesn't matter in Wreckfest because everybody's doing the same exact thing as I am. Or at least it kind of sort of looks like they are, because they'll be wrecking each other whether you're racing seriously or not. Because that's the point of the game. And overall, while no, it's definitely not the best racecraft, it's encouraging racing dirty and such. Esports and all that's nice, but at some point a break needs to happen from it as well. You can't be serious all the time, and this is a perfect example of that. There'd be a fair share of anger in this game, sure, but this is literally the best game out there to vent your anger in as well. And the anger about this game isn't literally stemmed from the game's inabilities and failures and such. It would be from the other drivers. And then you just take your anger out on the other drivers and not on the game itself. And that's a beautiful thing, ain't it? With GT Sport being lower than a lot of people's expectations were, Wreckfest, I think, has beat a lot of the expectations, honestly. It's better than I expected it to, and not much more I can say than that. I mean, that's all I really could have ever won out of a game. You can race serious if you want, the name its model will allow it. You can actually put it on realistic and race like it's somewhat real life. But there's a lot of games out there that can do that in general. What this game does best is wreck people. And there's really no other game out there that does it and allows it. There's stuff like Burnout Paradise Remastered, sure, but that's a completely different type game. That's an open world game with cars that are sort of sorted in classes and such. This game, it's literally just anything goes, and you can take your anger out race by race. And yeah, that's most certainly worth a yeehaw, folks. While in general, going back 5 years or so in gaming sounds like a bad thing, this game, in and of itself, is about 5 or so years old, all things considered. So essentially, it's just going back to what we saw at the very beginning of the game. And I remember watching like NerdKid videos and such back when his channel was actually still at its peak as well, 5 or so years ago. And 2 or 3 years ago, thinking this game I'll never be able to play, I was nostalgic and stuff for those videos because those were just fun to watch. A game that's so fun to watch, I remember fondly watching videos of the game. Finally being able to play that game in and of itself. Yeah, folks, that's most certainly worth yeehaw. Though, I do have a link in the description to the NerdCube video where he played a alpha build of it and had a downright sandbox mode in which you can literally have like rockets and explosions and houses and stuff that looks really cool, and I wish it was like in the game now, and that would be incredible if it was and such, because it's essentially just a sandbox where you have the same Wreckfest physics and such, but then you can shoot rockets out of your car and like bowling balls and cool stuff, and you can break houses and all that. And please, developers, bring that to the game, because that would be like incredible, and especially if you could somehow do that online, and that would literally make this game perfect, and it would be like an 11 out of 10, the greatest gaming experience I've ever had in my cotton picking life, and that would be the most cool thing in here with yeehaw and such, but that's not here yet.